Faith, welcome back to my little channel.
Y'all, just dropped off baby Fake at daycare. Yeah, it's gonna be a hectic day. The next time you see me, I'll be presenting. I'll be defending my capstone, basically talking about everything I've learned so far in the program the last 2 years. Glory be to God. I would not be here unless if it were for His grace and mercy. Heart pounding, and that's a good thing, you know? I left my laptop open for 1 second and put those 2 little lines between capstone, and I thought I'll just keep them on there.
Oh, that's cute. How?
I don't know how she did it, but I found it there.
I remember
good luck.
I used to be working, and then the kids would come over and hit the power button because they wanted my attention.
That or one time, one of the kids, I think it was Riley, we'd give them our phone while they were little just to play with, and she did my password so many times that it locked my phone. I didn't know you could set, and they couldn't recover it. I was like, really? Nope, you can't recover it.
No,
Okay, well, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Do you have any questions before we start? It'd be like a 20 to 30 minute presentation. Then we'll stop and ask you some questions. We do have another presentation at 11, so we'll have to stop about 10:50 or so just to transition to that one. So, but we'll just ask you some questions and get started. But any questions that you have? You want me to click on the just give me a head nod or next slide or something?
Do you want to share the slides in the Zoom, and then it'll all be in the same window?
Sure. Okay. Does that look good?
Yes, that looks
And
great.
then you can just tell me when to switch slide. Okay.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Dr. Bonnie. Good morning, Dr. Lynn.
Welcome.
I am Tanya Mube, and I'm going to be presenting on my capstone presentation for EDIT 893 course. So to start off, I'm going to start by telling you who I am, what I believe in, my core values, and my identities. So I started off with this first quote by Brené Brown, who's the writer of The Gifts of Imperfection. They read a lot of poetry around identity, and I thought this would be a perfect quote in explaining why I came up with this set of questions or this set of ideas to explain who I am as a person. So it says that true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. And during my one course for higher education environments this semester with Dr. Nilay, they always used to pose, before we had our discussion posts, they always used to ask us, showing up as your true authentic self, how does this question make you feel? Or how does this week's reading make you feel? And I thought that's a great way to ask myself questions in anything that I'm going to do in my practice. Upon graduation, I want to show up as my true self, not to pretend to be something to be a great fit, for example. And I just want to be my true self to be able to support people. And I believe I'll gravitate towards those who share my ideas, or those who might not share, but I believe there's something to learn as well from them. And I believe also there's a great freedom in showing up as my true self, because I'll have to continue working on pretending to be something that I'm not, to just fit into something that I truly am not. And I don't want to fit in that box. And so my visible identities, I'm Black, I'm female, and I'm able-bodied. And I chose these specific ones because as I present myself as a Black woman, people will already have their prejudgment as soon as they meet me before they've even had time to get to know my non-visible identities, which will be, for example, I'm a mother, my socioeconomic status, my religion, which I'll touch base on that later on and why this is important, and my educational and professional background. I'm here studying student affairs and administration in my master's, but I also studied in Russia, and I learned another language, which is one of the 5 important languages in the world, and I'm very proud of that, as well as my mental health conditions, which has been an influence in what I choose to do here on campus as well as upon graduation. I've had very interesting but intrinsic lived experiences, including grief, depression, anxiety, and that's just drove me to want to support other students on campus, because I believe this is one of the major issues as well on campus, mental health. And my nationality. As soon as people hear my name, the first thing they ask me is, are you South African? I like to think that I am the whole of Africa because I've heard people asking me, are you East African? Are you from South Africa? Are you Namibian? And I always say, no, I'm actually Zimbabwean. They say, do you speak Ndebele? And I'm like, yes, I do speak Ndebele. And I also speak Shona because my mother is Shona. So it's just a very interesting conversation and icebreaker. And I thought that's one of my major identities that I'm extremely proud of. As a professional, I identify with servant as well as transformational leadership. Upon going into this program, I always thought that I had a monolithic view of the leadership style that I could have. I used to identify with just the transformative rather. But upon attending many classes during the semester, including leadership and supervision style, here in the semester of fall 2024, I actually learned that no, if you can actually identify yourself as many leadership styles. And so I believe that I am an inspirational leader. I believe in empowering my students or followers, as we used to call it in the leadership course. I want to empower them to be even better than myself as a leader. I want to have shared leadership, shared equity. I want to empower everybody that I'm going to be working with, whether it's my colleagues or volunteers at the Gender and Sexuality Center that I oversee, or even the student parents that I work with during my internship at our International Student and Scholar Office here at UNL, as well as the Gender and Sexuality Center. Moving on to my passions. As I mentioned earlier, I've lived a very interesting life. It was filled with grief, but also in that grief came out beauty. I used to think, I want to go and study and be more of a mental health advocate only for selfish reasons. But I sat down and do further reflecting, which this program has really truly allowed me to reflect on my identities, on my passions, and how I envision my future to be like as a student affairs professional. And I saw that, no, this is absolutely not selfish. I like to lead as a leader with love and care and empathy. I'm going to touch again on the word empathy because it's going to come in a lot during my presentation. So I chose especially this picture on our left on Sonder by John Koenig. He coined this in 2012 in his dictionary of modern languages. And John Koenig mentioned that this painting specifically on this person, that's you as your whole self, beautiful with your lived experiences. Around you, there are also other people that have their own lived experiences. And Sonder is the realization that everybody that you're going to come across has their own lived experiences. And if you take time to sit and talk to them, you can learn one or two things from them, and you'll see that they also have roots within them and they can connect. And that brings us to the sense of community. Also in my we had to do a presentation on office and budgeting and for my leadership course this semester. And I decided to work on having a community-based program that's going to support our students here at UNL. And I used to do like peer reviews with one of the students in my cohort, Telly, and they asked me, so Tandy, I hear what you're saying, I'm hearing your ideas, but you haven't told me what exactly community is. What does community mean to you? And I thought that was a very pivotal thing. And I thought that in that moment it was absolutely beautiful for me because that too, Chile became a part of my community. Community is the people that surround common belief. Even if they don't believe in the same identities as you, they just have to give you an outside perspective. And so for me, community is very, very important. How I was raised, how I was brought up, my lived experiences living in Qatar, living in a different environment outside of what I was used to, coming here to America and completely being challenged, especially with my biases and learning that not everything that I've been taught is actually true. I have to unlearn a lot of things, as well as all of that comes with fostering inclusiveness and a sense of belonging for everybody that I'm going to be working with. So I also identify that as an international student, I have, of course, lived in so many different countries, but I came here and this was the first time that I experienced culture shock. And that too just led me to want to do more research, like, why is it you've lived in so many countries and you're only experiencing culture shock now? What does it mean to have a sense of belonging? How can you continue to foster this sense of belonging even for other international students that are going to come, after you? And that is why in my internship with the International Student Scholar Office this past summer, 2024, I created a handbook that will teach other incoming international student parents on all the things that they to expect, how to prepare for the cold winters, the extreme summers, where to go to find food, and that's similar to what we can find back home, which is something very interesting that I didn't know was going to be possible in America. But again, I had to let go of all my biases and learn everything that I knew. So I moved on to identify as the capstone as of me. Identify 3 issues in student affairs. And the first one is free speech on campus climate. I chose this one specifically because coming from Zimbabwe and also how I was brought up, women were expected to be more meek, to be quiet, to not speak up and not speak out. And I thought coming to America would empower me to be able to speak up and to advocate for others, not for just myself, but for other women and children. And lo and behold, according to the politics, which it's very important to also consider when we're talking about student affairs, because student affairs is continuously changing according to politics, even on the outside of campus communities, as well as with moving technologies. On the third issue, the more technology is going to be changing, the more things are going to also change in higher education. And also mental health and support for students. This is something that's always going to be there. Decided to dig deeper into why I chose the topic of mental health to delve into. This is a bit of it was a shock to me, to be honest, when I was doing a bit more research. So I decided to go on the UNL webpage for the Vice Chancellor, Executive Vice Chancellor, and this was under the faculty tip sheets for student mental health and resources. And the very first thing that you're met with when you go there is that 1 in 5 students suffer from either stress, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, or eating disorders, or any other mental health challenges. That's a very huge number, because I'm just thinking in my cohort, there's about 12 of us. And if that will mean 2 of us in that cohort will be suffering from this. And we might never know unless they seek out for help or they speak out. And also, we had a suicide response training that we had for one of our courses for last semester. And I learned that nearly 24,000 students attempt suicide and 1,100 college students complete suicide. That's a very huge number. That really scared me, because I just thought about UNL. Right now, we are 25,000 students enrolled. Imagine all of us just attempting. That really moved my heart, and it made me want to even do this work even more. I always told myself, upon graduation, I just want to find a job, because that's what's important, right? I need to secure a job to make sure my visa status is in place, and also to be able to help my daughter. But the more that I dug deeper into this capstone, it just made me reflect, like, Tali, this is even deeper than yourself. Remember the sense of community. Remember what you've been through. This has really made me want to support other students and remind me why. Sorry.
Take your time. It's okay.
Why I went into this. I also recognize that outside of being a student, there are a lot of societal pressures. Oh, you decided to go into your graduate program. So imagine the fear of, okay, I'm not meeting my deadlines, and the fear and the stigma that will come out of, oh, you're actually failing as a mom, or as a student, or as a grad assistant in the Gender and Sexuality Center. So I just imagined everybody else going through this. How best can we support each other? Especially with the marginalized students that we work with at the Gender and Sexuality Center. And not just the marginalized students, we also work with a majority of our student parents that we work with at the Gender and Sexuality are actually international student parents. Most of them come here alone with just the children, and that alone comes with its own set of pressures, because you have to fend for a dependent while also making sure that you're meeting all your expectations here. That can be a lot of pressure for a lot of us. I am grateful that I've had support, I've got family here, but I cannot stop to wonder how everybody else is doing who does not have the same support that I've had. I decided to label this tangible solutions because in my courses, like I mentioned during the program, we're often asked to reflect on what you think, okay, we've taught you this in class, how are you going to, present this? How are you going to put this into action, whether in your assistantship or upon graduation when you're working in higher education? And so for mental health, I thought I would implement campus-wide mental health resources. I think this is a very great cause to have across all campuses in America. As I mentioned, about 25,000 students across America attempt suicide in a year. And so we propose that we have offices such as CAPSIERT, UNL, which is and CARE, which is the Center of Advocacy, Response and Education, I believe, and EAP. I'm not sure a lot of students actually know about this, but EAP is Employee Assistance Program here at UNL, which is open to all faculty members, staff, as well as graduate students because we are recognized as employees of the university. You can take your dependents or even yourself if you're struggling with any mental health issues or even with family, if you need family counseling, for example. And we also have the counseling and school psychology here at UNL. Students can have, maybe just $10 per therapy session, which I thought is a great price considering that therapy here in America is quite costly. It's looking at $100 or more per session. So I thought this is a very great resource to use if we've tried all the other ones and all of them have failed. And also to leverage technology. I think it's very important. A lot of our students are always on their phones, texting, chatting on different applications. So I thought I would use mental health applications, for example, like Calm. And we can use AI to identify at-risk students and also to train our staff on identifying the signs of either suicide or depression or anxiety. And we train them, our staff and our faculty, to make sure that they do not re-traumatize their students upon approaching them and not to share this important information that the student would have shared with them in the most vulnerable time, so that we can keep that trust and to create that relationship between us as student affairs professionals and our students. So we can also use, touching on leveraging technology, we can use predictive analytics as well to identify our students so we can track. We have here GroupMe, for example, that we can use to also track at-risk students, and we can even track things like attendance, grades, or engagement in classes. In fostering inclusive communities, I thought this was a major thing that, as I mentioned earlier, I am working at the Gender and Sexuality Center at the moment. We are being faced with one of the most difficult things in politics, for example, where we've seen ODI offices being closed on campuses, and gender and sexuality centers are being closed. Even the closest one at University of Nebraska, Omaha, has been closed. And now here, we've actually been told, Thandi, I know you're excited to interview the next graduate student, but we're actually not sure if the center will be open come fall 2026. And this is also very heartbreaking because of all the work that we're doing. I know people can think, oh, it's just LGBTQA work that you're doing out of this office, but here at UNL community, there are not a lot of initiatives that support student parents. And at the Gender and Sexuality Center, we're one of the few that would provide these services to support student parents. So again, this is very heartbreaking, and it's sad to see that closing affinity-based centers is very emotional, and not having another backup once you close them, and no explanation as to why you're closing them, simply because of politics and power play. It's very heartbreaking. And then moving on to free speech, I decided to touch on Knight Foundation Survey because they're one of the major organizations here. They support effective democracy by funding free expression through journalism, arts, culture, and community. I love that they do that because community is a major aspect in my capstone. And so I thought that I would dig deeper into the surveys that they've done. And they found that only 2 in 5 students felt that free speech was allowed, was secure for them today. And especially, this is very worrying, especially on college campuses, because in a lot of political campaigns, a lot of our leaders, especially in the Republican Party, they would attack higher ed and say, you are actually stifling the right wing. And how are we doing that? By just speaking freely. Freedom of speech is a human right, And I feel this should not be taken away. And again, I mentioned I come from Zimbabwe, where my culture is stifled as a woman, not to be able to speak up, and I thought it would be different coming here to America. So this is very heartbreaking. I know I don't have much say because I'm a resident alien at this time. I cannot vote, I cannot speak up, but I intend to use this little power that I have to just, have civil discussions between myself, my colleagues, as well as the students that I'm going to be working with. And if we take this away from student campuses, we are also taking away their rights and also the retention we see that might suffer, because a lot of students feel that they can come and express themselves while they're here on campus community. And once that's taken away, what's the point of me even going to college to broaden my knowledge? Some of the tangible solutions for free speech are fostering open dialogue. I decided to choose the topic for art of hosting. This was coined by Nicky M and Freeze M in 2013, which is whereby you can allow different people from different groups to come together and to have civil discussions. That way, I believe we can learn more from each other and move forward. And a second thing would be balancing rights and responsibilities. I think there's a sense of urgency in equipping our students as well as our staff with knowing how to show up as a true authentic self and keeping a good balance between hate speech and actually having productive conversation that does not incite violence. And on education and civic engagement, again, as I mentioned, we need to teach our students and also train our staff as well on the importance of free speech on campus community. I decided to split the influence of DEI on my current practice as well as upon graduation, and I created this quote. I stated that fostering a sense of community on college environments requires a delicate balance between promoting inclusivity and promoting free speech. I believe this is very important, and touching on mental health resources and creating safe spaces for folks. I think this is very important that we empower each other as a community, whether it's faculty, whether it's staff, or it's the students that we're here to serve. I think it's important to foster the sense of community and to promote free speech, but also making sure that we are not overstepping each other's boundaries. And at the Gender and Sexuality Center, as I mentioned, we face us being closed in the future. It's still in talks at the moment, but I intend on leveraging my position to collaborate with the volunteers that come in at the center and to continuously support LGBTQIA plus students with children who've got systemic changes, including the gender neutral restroom initiative, as well as lactation rooms. Again, coming here to America was the very first time I got to the airport and I saw a lactation room. And this was so amazing because I'd never seen anything quite like it. I thought this was something very natural that, mothers needed, but I saw that, hey, there's much more things that we can do. And I touched on the Heinz-Lick Hall. In higher ed environments course that we had to do this semester, our instructor told us that the dean told them that the Heinz-Lick Hall is the only space that we could have that class. And I thought that was very ironic, considering that we're learning about higher ed environments and how we need to create spaces where everybody feels welcomed, where everybody can access everything that we have. So, for example, having movable furniture or dimming lights or having window for natural lights, things like that. How can we create more inclusive spaces for learning on our college campuses, and how can we continuously educate students? And again, our instructor asked us a very important question. Did you actually think about any of these things prior to coming to this course? And unfortunately, coming from a privileged point, because I'm able-bodied, I never thought about these things. Like, there are some students who need elevators, for example, to get to a second floor, or they'll need chairs with no arms to be able to sit comfortably. So it's been a great learning experience for me. I chose this amazing picture. I got it from iStock, and I thought this was very beautiful to encompass everything that I've spoken about today, sense of community at the bottom, and everybody, we all look different, we have different backgrounds, we have different beliefs and core values, but we can still come together and we can improve the way that we talk and the way that we engage, the way that we communicate. The influence of DEI in my future practice, I decided to split it in just two aspects. I want to continuously facilitate conversations where students and staff can explore the intersections of identity, privilege, and power. I believe that everybody's got some sense of bias. I've seen and heard a lot of Black people. I'm even afraid to say it myself. I used to say, Black people cannot be racist, but that's actually not true. I want to continuously live in my truth. I want to be able to be that path, because I believe also sense of belonging, sense of community can be created once another Black girl sees me, or someone that sees something that they can identify within me. Then I can be able to influence and to teach them the skills to engage in difficult but meaningful conversations around, these difficult conversations like religion, politics, or any other aspect that may affect our students. And we also need to assess policies for unintended biases or barriers, and to advocate for updates to ensure equity. Equity is a very huge aspect to our work as student affairs professionals, in my belief. And I believe that everybody needs a fair chance to education. Everybody needs to have a fair chance to freedom of speech, while also respecting everybody else's boundaries. So that as I start off, I will not have a big position, but what can I do? What change can I bring about even in my position? What influence can I bring about? So I want to continue with my mental health advocacy and to always practice inclusive language and equitable disciplinary practices. My biases, I want to continuously take Harvard implicit tests. I did not know, again, upon coming to this program, I did not know this was available to us, but we're required to take this in the college environments in America with Dr. Chanel. And this was a great practice for us, because I got to learn that, hey, the things I've been taught is actually not what is there. So it's okay to take a moment to research, learn more about language as times are evolving. How can we create those spaces where we can engage in conversation with our colleagues? And then also journaling after a difficult conversation. In our leadership course this semester with Dr. Bondi facilitated another guest, thank you, Dr. Bondi, who is Dr. Michael Benitez Jr., who is currently the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at the Metropolitan State University of Denver. And there's something that he said. He said, you need to learn to become a toilet. When he said that, this was very shocking. But the more he explained, I thought that this was a very good skill to have as a student affairs professional. You need to be able to take in things, to listen, to have empathy, because empathy is a very huge skill to have. You need to be able to have those difficult conversations, even with people that don't see life the way that you do. It's very important to have this continuous education, and also professional development is very important, to attend workshops, conferences that can broaden my knowledge. I've decided to travel because in traveling I've learned a great deal about my identities. I've completely gotten rid, not completely, because there's always room to grow. I have changed the way I look at the world rather. And so traveling is very, very important to broaden your language, to broaden how you speak to people, how you communicate, to understand their cultures. And also my personal well-being plan, being a mom, has been very fulfilling for me. And so I've learned a great deal as well. And also becoming a mom has made me also fall in love with supporting student parents on college campuses. So I think this will be in my wellness plan, as well as YouTube. I think this is a great platform that I created over the years. I have shared many things on there surrounding mental health, as well as just my life, how I navigate being a mother, how I navigate mental health. And so I think I want to continue on this process. Spirituality is a huge thing for me. Without him, without his grace, I would not be here. Edad, thank you so much to my advisor. Thank you so much, Dr. Bondi. You have been very supportive, even outside of class. Many people don't know this, but I lost my dad earlier this year, and due to the support of Edad, I'll be going home. Just pay my final respects. So this is very, very, it really touched my heart to have the sense of community that's going to be there for you even outside school. So I really, really appreciate this. And the Gender and Sexuality Center, especially my supervisor, Dominique, thank you so much for empowering me and for providing the support that I need to transition from being a graduate assistant and to one day being a student affairs professional. And also Tilly, thank you so much. Even though you're part of my cohort, I see you as my peer, but I've learned so much from you, so thank you. And my family, my friends, my daughter, thank you, Mom and Dad, for the support that you continuously show me. And my mom was also part of this program. she suggested that this would be a great fit, and I'm eternally grateful for her for pushing me. I had just come from labor, C-section, and my mom was like, Tandy, go through your essays. And that just shows that I'm resilient, just like the mission here at UNL says, in our grit, in our glory. So if we continue to work hard for what we believe in, we are destined to just shine the light on the next cohort and even the students that we're going to be working with. So thank you so much for listening. And I am welcome to any questions. And these are the references that I used. And many more. I just couldn't put all of them on there.
I'll turn it over to Dr. Bondi.
I guess I want to, part of this is to be a celebration of your learning. You mentioned reflection has been a really big part of your program, and so I kind of want to know what it was like for you to sit and work on this project and go through that kind of reflection about what you've learned and what's important to you.
Yes. So this capstone, it was very grueling in the beginning, especially putting everything together, because I actually panicked because I was like, I'm talking about everything that I've learned about in the last 2 years in just a space of 30 minutes. And so just having to go through to choose what exactly I'm going to talk about, my leadership styles, how I have, put into practice everything I've learned in my reflections, in my journals, for example, even discussion posts in my different courses that I've taken. So it was grueling in the beginning, but as I went through it, I became a bit more relaxed, which is very beautiful, because in reflection, it calls for you to show up, as I mentioned in my capstone, to show up as your true, authentic self. And from that, everything else flows. I didn't want to pretend to be something that I'm not. I wanted to just show up, okay, this is the kind of leader I am, and these are my identities, and how do all those intersections meet? And how do I put all of that in just 30 minutes? So it was grueling, but beautiful.
One of the themes throughout your presentation was about wellness, and you offered some suggestions. I was curious, I don't know if you said this explicitly, maybe that's why I'm asking the question, like, what were the things that you have been able to practice through your time being a graduate student is stressful, being a graduate student while parenting is stressful, you mentioned grieving, things in life happen, and so what do you think the keys were for you and your wellness?
The keys, definitely I mentioned the CAPS, CARE, and EAP. I think that's a major one for me, utilizing the resources here on campus that will foster my mental health journey. I have been to counseling, and I also mentioned that I want to do more traveling. I have been doing some of that with my family and also some of that with just myself. Went to Vermont, Colorado, and when I went to Vermont, I got to see another different university. And even when we were in Colorado, we got the chance to drive through Denver, and I got to see more universities there. So just seeing how the physical spaces are put together, and also the ideologies when you get to sit down with the students that have attended those colleges, I think that was very helpful for me in just growing and learning, because I find great joy in learning and just broadening my knowledge, as well as my YouTube channel. I have to do much more research before I just sit down and talk, because I like to say I'm not the most intelligent in the room. When I open my mouth, there's someone more intelligent who's going to be challenging what I'm saying. So for example, when I was talking about mental health, I did more research before coming. I would journal, for example, and also do more research on Abraham Maslow, the hierarchy of human needs, for example. I actually had people reaching out and like, hey, I think you should have added this when you spoke about that. So it's been a great learning experience, actually, with the YouTube channel, traveling, and also just engaging, talking to people.
How'd you get started on the YouTube channel?
So it's actually a very funny story. I came back home from college one day over the summer break when I was in Russia, and I found myself just taking videos of everything I was eating, pictures of everywhere we're going. And my dad was like, Tandy, have you noticed that you're actually doing this, or you're just doing it because you like it? And then I was like, that's a great question, Dad. So my dad has been a great resource. I was like, I should start a YouTube channel because I love videography and this will be great. And yeah, it's been great so far.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, like, when I appreciate well, yeah, first, what you just said about like other people being more intelligent in the room, or sort of making sure that you're not. Humility or being humble, I think, is one of your certainly a strength or something that you value. Is the sense that I get from you. But I wonder too, like, what wisdom do you bring to the spaces that you're in based on your experiences, and like what wisdom do you bring to the spaces that you're in?
That's a wonderful question, Dr. Corey. Thank you. I like to think that my lived experiences and my empathy is a great skill and a great wisdom to bring, because I have had the opportunity to travel and talk to so many people from different backgrounds. I think I can navigate different conversations with diverse backgrounds. So this is a wonderful skill as well to equip the students that I'm going to be working with. And because I've had such heartbreaking lived experience as well, and I tell myself every day, I'm here. I'm still coming to class, even though I'm behind on a lot of assignments. Thank you for giving me the grace. It's important that I'm still trying. And I want to show everybody else that I'm going to be working with that it's okay. It's okay to just acknowledge that you're not okay. It's okay to acknowledge that you don't know everything, that you can actually learn from the students that we're serving through conversation and just being transparent and being vulnerable. So I think that's a very huge wisdom piece that I bring to the table.
Yeah, and empathy is another word, I think, from the counseling principles class that I think you certainly have sort of a natural tendency toward, because empathy is not easy. Like, I think you have to work at it, and it can be a challenge depending on where you're at in your life. And what are some of the, like, maybe pros and cons of empathy? Like, what do you need to sort of be, do you feel like with your empathy? It's certainly a strength, but what could be some potential, maybe unintended?
Especially in having difficult conversation, I believe as a leader, you need to be able to have empathy. And I always say it's not to be confused with sympathy with a lot of things. You need to listen with care with what someone else is saying to you and take it all in, but also have the emotional maturity to be able to respond well and not to let it lead to violence or just exchanging bad words, for example. And often people overlook this, especially coming from a woman. They see this as a weakness, that you're meek, that you're loving, you're caring. But I think everybody should just adopt this, because for you to be an effective leader, you need to have empathy. You need to understand, take time to know everybody that you're supervising, for example. Take time to create those bonds on an individual level so that you know how to show up for them, so that you know how to empower them, so that you know, okay, they need a bit more time, they need a bit more grace, as opposed to another student who submits work on time, for example. So in as much as it can be seen like a weakness, I don't think it is. I think it's a great strength. And with that said, it's a good thing to know the balance, to be assertive, but also be loving and caring.
Yeah, it wasn't intended to be a trick question. I mean, more directly, like the different roles that you play, especially being a parent, and is when do you put yourself first, or when are you able to put yourself first? And when with empathy, I think maybe that can be a challenge sometimes, where we don't, not just with empathy, but maybe where we don't put ourselves first, or you may find yourself in that position. So part of your wellness is, so it didn't need to be a trick question.
This isn't mean to be pressure, because I fully understand you may not know, but where are you at in thinking about what's next?
I have been thinking about that. I mentioned one of my great supports is my supervisor at the Gender and Sexuality Center. We actually started looking on higher ed jobs, for example, earlier on in the semester. I know a lot of people are saying that you need to wait till February, for example, to start applying. But we've actually been saving the potential jobs that I would like to apply for and looking at the job descriptions and tailoring my curriculum vitae, or my resume, as some may call it, to see, and also for professional development. What can I do to equip myself with the skills that I'm going to be putting so that I am a great fit? I hate that word, but unfortunately that's how the world works. And so I'm I'm excited. I've already started thinking about if I'm going to go into higher education. I would love to support International Student Office, for example, or even student parent initiatives. Because I've looked at, for example, UC Berkeley's student parent facility. They have an amazing setup that I would love to work with. But I understand that's a very competitive spot to try to work for, and I'm not going to just limit myself to just one thing. So international student support or student parents. Those are my two main fields that I want to go into upon graduation.
You mentioned the environments class, and I don't know what Dr. Mahabali talks specifically about, or but thinking about the institutional type that you may go to, and I know that for international students, sometimes that can be with sponsorship and lots of other things, but just to be thinking about, or keep it on your radar, the community college system, whereas I think with student parents, and sometimes there might be misperceptions that there aren't international students at community colleges, but there certainly are, and so maybe some opportunities
Refugees.
there. Right, exactly. So I think you might be a good fit, particularly around the community college system in a lot of ways. And on the other hand, I think as you've raised awareness, is that sometimes on campuses like UNL, where we sort of cater to the traditional student parents may get lost in the shuffle of that. And so I don't think it matters that much, but I just keep the community college system on your radar.
Most certainly. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, similarly, I was thinking about, I don't know if it's true or not, but I have a perception that the jobs serving like in an international student's office are competitive.
Yes.
That there are very few positions and more people who want to do that work than there are positions. And so you might think about other ways to be able to serve international students that actually might be more fulfilling than kind of the compliance role that those offices usually are required to do, and then they might do some support on the side. But the international student offices really they're like a legal arm protecting the institution. They're not always, some do a better job than others in serving international students. So my point is, think about what kind of environments. It could be a community college. It could be, there's other colleges just have a lot of international students, and maybe you could work in, I don't know, do student programming somewhere, or student support somewhere where you might get to just interact with a lot of international students. So either by looking at the university's mission or looking at their demographics, you could find out. Maybe they have a special program, a learning community or something like that. But I hope you're proud of what you have done. Maybe you haven't been able to do everything that you wanted to do, but somebody told me once you can do everything but not all at one time. So, being a parent with a young child and the culture shock of living here and the grief that you have been managing, you have to hold it all together, but that's a lot to hold together. So I hope you're proud of what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. B.
And I might echo those.
And just like you would tell those students to use their resources, and you have used your resources, I also think there are resources that you have not quite tapped, a little bit shy or nervous or other feelings about how you should be very capable on your own. So don't hesitate to reach out and use all your resources.
You've done remarkable here. There's students and lots of people who are going to be very fortunate to have you in their lives in the near future. So give yourself that, for sure. You've done. you're amazing. So just don't forget that. And you're just amazing. So.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman.
I think we're out of time. I wish we could. Sometimes I wish we could. Students don't feel this way, but could talk for a long time and just. But this is a big deal, right? Like doing this and finishing this up and getting this sort of out of the way, and those, get better. Yeah, this is a big deal. So we'll sort of confer and but you'll hear, I'm guessing, by the end of the week potentially, just because we'll see. I'll talk to Dr. Bonnie and see but we'll get it. You'll get it.
Thank
And
you.
we'll all do it sort of at the same time. That's why we just have people wait. So.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.